The Elder Reborn. Lapu Lapu. Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 1. The Last Engineer. The rain fell steadily over Metro Manila, turning the city lights into shimmering reflections across the wet pavement. Inside an aging industrial warehouse on the outskirts of the city, only one light remained on. The workshop smelled of machine oil, hot steel, and freshly cut metal. Every wall was lined with tools collected over nearly 5 decades. Lathes, milling machines, welding equipment, engine blocks, gears of every size, blueprints yellowed with age, and prototypes that had never reached production. At the center of it all stood an elderly man with silver hair and weathered hands. Eduardo Santos, 68 years old, mechanical engineer, inventor, machinist. For almost 50 years, he had dedicated his life to solving problems. His classmates had become wealthy executives. Some had founded multinational companies. Others had retired comfortably with pensions and seaside homes. Eduardo had chosen a different path. Whenever factories broke down, they called him. Whenever machines failed, they sought his advice. Whenever communities needed affordable irrigation systems, rice mills, or low-cost generators, he designed them without asking for recognition. He never cared about becoming famous. He wanted to build things that improved lives. Yet history rarely remembered engineers. Only kings, only generals, only conquerors. He looked around his quiet workshop. Every machine carried a memory. The miniature hydroelectric turbine he had built for a mountain village. The automated rice thresher that doubled harvest efficiency. The low-cost water purification system that brought clean drinking water to remote communities. The diesel engine conversion that reduced fuel consumption by 30%. Thousands of inventions, hundreds of notebooks, countless sleepless nights, yet none had truly changed the world. Eduardo sighed. Perhaps, he murmured, I was born in the wrong era. A sharp pain suddenly gripped his chest. His wrench slipped from his fingers, clattering loudly against the concrete floor. He reached for the workbench, but his legs no longer obeyed. His vision blurred. The machines around him became indistinct shadows. He smiled bitterly. So, this is how it ends. No family surrounded him. No reporters. No ceremony. Only the quiet hum of an unfinished machine. His heartbeat slowed. His breathing became shallow. The rain outside grew louder. Darkness swallowed everything. Eduardo expected nothing after death. Instead, he heard birds singing. A cool breeze brushed against his face. The scent of damp earth and wild flowers filled the air. His eyelids fluttered open. Bright sunlight pierced through towering trees unlike any forest he had ever seen. Leaves the size of umbrellas swayed overhead. Strange birds with shimmering blue feathers flew between branches. The sky itself seemed impossibly clear. Hospital, he whispered. His voice startled him. It was young. Far too young. He raised his hands. They were small, smooth, without wrinkles. No scars from welding. No calluses from decades of machining. What? His heartbeat quickened. He touched his face. Firm skin. Strong jaw. No beard. No. A scream echoed nearby. Lapu Lapu. Several people rushed toward him. A middle-aged woman wearing woven tribal clothing dropped to her knees beside him. Tears streamed down her face. You've finally woken up. She hugged him tightly. I thought the fever had taken you. Eduardo froze. The memories struck him like lightning. Another life. Another name. Another childhood. Fragments flooded his mind. Running barefoot through forests. Fishing in rivers. Being mocked by stronger boys. Sleeping inside a bamboo hut. A father killed by a spirit beast. A mother dying of illness. An orphan. A weak teenager. His name. Lapu Lapu. 16 years old. Member of the Bakwit tribe. One of hundreds of small tribes scattered across the southern wilderness. The memories merged. 2 lives. 1 soul. Eduardo staggered backward. I've been reborn. For the next 3 days, Lapu Lapu remained silent. The tribe believed the fever had damaged his mind. No one noticed the real reason. He was learning, observing, comparing. The Bakwit tribe lived simply. Their homes were made from bamboo, hardwood, and woven leaves. Iron was scarce. Bronze tools were treasured. Steel was almost mythical. Farming relied on wooden plows. Water came directly from streams. Most hunting spears had crude stone or soft iron tips. As Lapu Lapu walked through the village, his engineer's mind instinctively analyzed everything. The grain storage leaked. The charcoal pits wasted heat. The blacksmith's furnace barely reached the temperatures needed for quality iron. The water wheel powering the grain mill lost nearly half its potential energy because of poor blade design. He wanted to fix everything immediately, but he stopped himself. No, knowledge without power is dangerous. If he suddenly introduced advanced engineering concepts, people would either fear him or try to exploit him. He needed patience. Lapu. A loud voice interrupted his thoughts. 3 teenagers approached. The tallest carried a hunting spear over his shoulder. His name was Bantig, the strongest youth in the tribe. Behind him walked his usual companions, laughing. So the sick rat survived. Another boy sneered. I thought the forest spirits finally took you. Bantig smirked. You still owe us yesterday's hunt. Before Lapu Lapu could answer, Bantig shoved him hard. His unfamiliar young body stumbled into the mud. The boys burst into laughter. One kicked over the small basket of wild herbs Lapu Lapu had spent the morning gathering. Leaves scattered across the ground. Too weak to hunt. Too weak to fight. Maybe you should become a cook. The insults continued. In his previous life, Eduardo had managed factory workers, negotiated with executives, and solved crises that could bankrupt companies. Compared to those challenges, these boys were children. He slowly stood, brushed the dirt from his clothes, looked directly into Bantig's eyes. Not with fear, not with hatred, but with calm. That calm unsettled Bantig more than anger would have. HMPH. The bully spat onto the ground. Let's go. The 3 left, still laughing. Lapu Lapu knelt to collect his scattered herbs. An elderly herbalist watched from nearby. You didn't fight back. Lapu Lapu smiled faintly. Not every battle should be fought today. The old man blinked in surprise. Those were not the words of a 16-year-old. That evening, after the village had gone to sleep, Lapu Lapu sat outside his hut. Moonlight illuminated the clearing. He picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt. Circles, gears, axles, bearings, water wheel designs, trip hammers, bellows, blast furnaces, pulley systems. He filled the ground with mechanical sketches from memory. His heart pounded with excitement. This world has chi, but even chi cannot replace engineering. He looked toward the mountains rising beyond the forest. Somewhere beyond those peaks, civilizations must exist. Kingdoms, empires, sects, wars. If technology here lagged behind Earth's by centuries, then his greatest weapon would not be cultivation. It would be knowledge. A smile slowly formed on his face. In my previous life, I built machines. This time, I'll build an empire. At that very moment, deep beneath the mountains beyond the Bakwit tribe, an ancient forge that had slept for 10,000 years suddenly trembled. A faint golden light flickered within its sealed doors. A voice, old as time itself, whispered through the darkness. Greater than, at last. Greater than, the successor has arrived. End of Chapter 1. The Elder Reborn. Lapu Lapu. Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 2. The weakest boy of the Bakwit tribe. The next morning, Lapu Lapu woke before sunrise. It was a habit that had survived death. In his previous life, Eduardo Santos had learned that the quietest hours of the morning were often the most productive. Before the phone calls, before the factory workers arrived, before meetings and problems demanded his attention. Now, the same habit had become even more valuable. He stepped outside his small bamboo hut. The village was still asleep. Mist floated between the trees. The distant mountains were barely visible beneath the gray morning sky. Lapu Lapu stretched his thin body. He immediately noticed the difference. 16 years old, healthy, young, but weak, extremely weak. His arms were thin. His muscles had barely developed. His body lacked the strength necessary for serious physical labor. And, according to the memories of the previous owner of this body, there was another problem. He could not cultivate. In this world, that was almost equivalent to being crippled. Lapu Lapu closed his eyes. He tried to feel the energy everyone called chi. Nothing. He concentrated harder. Still nothing. He breathed slowly. In, out. He tried again. Nothing. Interesting. He wasn't disappointed. Not yet. Instead, his mind became curious. Why can't I sense chi? He had no scientific instruments to measure it, but the problem could still be analyzed. Perhaps the energy didn't exist inside his body naturally. Perhaps his meridians were blocked. Perhaps the cultivation method used by the tribe was inefficient. Or perhaps, there is another mechanism entirely. Lapu Lapu smiled. Everything is a problem until the mechanism is understood. He grabbed a bamboo stick. Then he began walking toward the river. The Bakwit tribe's main water source was a wide river running through the forest. It was beautiful. It was also badly managed. Lapu Lapu stood on the riverbank and studied the current. The river moved quickly during the rainy season. During the dry season, however, its water level dropped dramatically. This caused frequent crop failures. He examined the surrounding terrain. The tribe had fertile soil, enough sunlight, plenty of water, yet their harvest remained poor. The problem was not nature. It was infrastructure. Lapu Lapu crouched and picked up a handful of soil. Drainage is terrible. He looked toward the fields. Water enters during heavy rain. He pointed toward a lower section. Then stays there. He looked at the dried crops. During the dry season, the fields become useless. His eyes narrowed. Irrigation. The solution was obvious. The tribe needed canals, but building them manually would take months. Lapu Lapu began designing a simple system in his head. A main canal, secondary channels, water gates, storage ponds. Nothing technologically advanced, but in this world, it could transform the tribe. He immediately returned to the village. The tribal chief was sitting outside his longhouse. Datu Makatuna was an enormous man. Even in his late 50s, he possessed a powerful physique. Scars covered his arms. A massive iron axe rested beside him. 2 guards stood nearby. When Lapu Lapu approached, the chief looked up. Lapu, chief. The old warrior raised an eyebrow. You rarely come here. I have an idea. The guards exchanged amused glances. Datu Makatuna smiled. An idea? Yes. About what? Farming. The chief stared at him. Then laughed. You. Lapu Lapu remained calm. Yes. The chief's laughter stopped. You're 16. I know. You're the weakest hunter in the tribe. I know. You cannot cultivate. I know. The chief leaned forward. Then why should I listen to you? Lapu Lapu looked directly at him. Because the tribe is wasting half its harvest. Silence. The chief's expression changed. What did you say? Your farmers lose crops every rainy season because of flooding. Lapu Lapu pointed toward the fields. Then they lose crops during the dry season because there isn't enough water. The chief frowned. Lapu Lapu continued. Your problem isn't the soil. It's water management. The chief's eyes narrowed. How do you know this? I observed it. The chief studied the boy. What do you propose? Canals. Canals. Yes. Lapu Lapu picked up a stick. He drew in the dirt. The first line represented the river. Then another. And another. Build a main channel here. He drew a second line. Then divide it into smaller channels. Another line. Water can be directed toward every field. He added small circles. During the rainy season, gates can be closed. Then he drew a large circle. Excess water can be stored here. The chief stared at the drawing. Lapu Lapu continued. During the dry season, we open the gates. The stored water flows into the fields. Datu Makatuna was silent. The idea was simple, almost painfully simple, but no one had thought of it. Finally, the chief asked. How long? To build? Yes. With 50 workers. Perhaps 2 months. The chief frowned. Too long. Lapu Lapu smiled. Then give me 1 week. The guards laughed. The chief didn't. 1 week. Yes. With how many workers? 10. The chief stared at him. Then laughed again. Very well. He pointed at Lapu Lapu. Do it. Lapu Lapu immediately began working. His first challenge was finding tools. The tribe possessed axes, hammers, shovels, but almost everything was inefficient. The handles were poorly designed. The blades were uneven. The shovels were too heavy. The workers became exhausted quickly. Lapu Lapu immediately understood. Tool efficiency. He gathered several blacksmiths. The tribe's best blacksmith was a middle-aged man named Tondong Guro. Guro was famous for making hunting knives. Lapu Lapu approached him. I need your help. Guro laughed. Why would a weak boy need a blacksmith? I need a better shovel. A shovel, yes. Guro shrugged. Show me. Lapu drew a design. A wider blade, a curved neck, a lighter wooden handle, a reinforced metal edge. Guro stared at it. Why? Because this shape enters the soil more easily. How? The angle. Guro frowned. Lapu took the shovel and demonstrated. Your current shovel pushes against the soil. He drew another diagram. This one cuts into it. Guro slowly understood. He made the shovel. It took 1 day. The result surprised everyone. The new tool could move almost twice as much soil with the same amount of effort. Guro stared at Lapu. Where did you learn this? Lapu smiled. From experience. That answer was technically true. The irrigation project began. 10 workers became 20. 20 became 50. Everyone wanted to see whether the strange young man could accomplish his impossible promise. Lapu supervised everything. He measured distances, calculated slopes, designed drainage. He even created a simple leveling instrument from wood and a bowl of water. The workers were fascinated. What's that? A level. What does it do? Shows whether the ground is flat. How? Lapu sighed. Look. He demonstrated. The workers stared. It was simple, yet revolutionary. The project progressed rapidly. By the 5th day, the main canal was nearly complete. On the 7th, Lapu opened the first water gate. Water flowed. It moved through the main canal. Then divided. 1 channel, 2, 4, 8. The water reached the fields. The farmers shouted. It works. Lapu stood silently. The chief arrived. He looked at the flowing water. Then at Lapu. How much grain can we produce? Lapu considered the fields. At least twice as much. The chief's eyes widened. Twice. Perhaps more. The old chief looked toward the river. For the first time, he seemed to realize something. This boy was different, but not everyone was impressed. Bantig hated him. The stronger youth had expected Lapu to remain the village punching bag. Instead, people were beginning to admire him. Farmers praised him. Blacksmiths listened to him. Even the chief sought his advice. Bantig couldn't accept it. One afternoon, he confronted Lapu near the training ground. You're becoming arrogant. Lapu looked at him. Am I? You think you're better than everyone? No. Then prove it. Bantig threw his spear onto the ground. Fight me. The surrounding youths immediately gathered. Lapu glanced at the spear. Then at Bantig. No. Bantig's face reddened. Afraid. No. Then fight. I don't see the point. Bantig charged. His fist flew toward Lapu's face. The surrounding youths shouted. Lapu moved. 1 step. That's all. Bantig's punch missed. Lapu grabbed his wrist. Then used Bantig's own momentum. Thud. The larger boy crashed into the dirt. Everyone fell silent. Lapu released him. Bantig stared upward. He had lost. Without a single punch. You. Lapu looked down. You are stronger than me. Bantig froze. Then why did I lose? Because you only know how to use strength. Lapu walked away. The surrounding youths watched silently. For the first time, they were afraid of him. Not because he was powerful, but because they couldn't understand him. That night, Lapu returned to his hut. He sat beside a small fire. His body was exhausted. His mind was not. He looked at his hands. Something was bothering him. During his fight with Bantig, he had felt something. A strange warmth. For a brief moment, his body had moved faster than expected. Lapu closed his eyes. He tried to recreate the sensation. Nothing. He concentrated. Still nothing. Then, a faint sensation appeared, like a tiny spark beneath his skin. Lapu's eyes opened. He had felt it, only for a second, but it was real. He immediately began analyzing. The tribe's cultivation technique was simple. Breathe, meditate, absorb chi. But perhaps, he had been doing it wrong. Lapu began experimenting. He controlled his breathing, slowly, deeply. He imagined his body as a mechanical system. Energy entering, circulating, returning. He adjusted his breathing rhythm. Nothing. He changed it again. Still nothing. Then he remembered something. A principle from his old life. Resonance. Everything had a frequency. Perhaps chi did as well. He began breathing at a specific rhythm. Inhale, hold, exhale, pause, again, inhale, hold, exhale, pause. The spark returned, stronger. Lapu-Lapu's eyes widened. Interesting. The energy moved, slowly, through his body. He felt warmth spreading through his chest. Then his arms. Then his legs. Pain suddenly exploded through his body. Lapu-Lapu collapsed. He bit down hard to prevent himself from screaming. His muscles burned. His bones felt like they were breaking. Sweat poured from his face. Yet he didn't stop. He continued breathing. The chi became stronger. Then, a strange sound echoed from the forest. Boom. Lapu-Lapu froze. The ground trembled. Birds exploded from the trees. Then another sound. Boom. Something was moving. Something enormous. The tribe's alarm bell began ringing. People screamed. Spirit beast. Lapu-Lapu immediately stood. Outside, warriors grabbed weapons. The chief shouted orders. A massive creature emerged from the forest. A black fang boar. Its body was larger than a horse. Its tusks were longer than a man's arm. Its eyes glowed red. The tribe's warriors formed a defensive line. Lapu-Lapu watched. He immediately understood. The beast was injured. Blood covered its side. That made it more dangerous. A wounded animal was unpredictable. The chief raised his axe. Prepare. The beast charged. The warriors attacked. Spears struck its hide. Most broke. The boar continued forward. Then Lapu-Lapu noticed something. The beast's left leg was damaged. It couldn't turn quickly. He immediately shouted, "Move left." Nobody listened. "Move left." The chief finally heard him. Everyone left. The warriors moved. The boar charged past them. Lapu-Lapu grabbed a spear. He looked around. The terrain, the trees, the river, everything became a calculation. He saw the solution. Drive it toward the river. The warriors obeyed. The beast became trapped near the riverbank. Lapu-Lapu noticed the irrigation gate. He smiled. Open the gate. The water surged. The muddy ground became unstable. The beast slipped. Crash. The warriors attacked. The chief's axe struck the beast's neck. The black fang boar screamed. Then collapsed. Silence. The tribe stared. They had survived. Lapu-Lapu stood beside the river. He looked at the dead beast. Then at his own hands. The strange chi inside him was still moving. But something else had happened. The ancient forge, the one hidden beneath the distant mountains, had awakened again. This time, a massive golden symbol appeared above its sealed entrance. And a voice echoed through the mountains. The heavenly forge scripture has found its master. Far away, in an ancient temple, an old man suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils glowed gold. He whispered, "After 10,000 years, the inheritor has finally appeared." Back in the Bakwit tribe, Lapu-Lapu looked toward the mountains. He didn't know what waited for him there. He didn't know that ancient cultivators had already begun searching for him. He didn't know that his name would one day be feared by emperors. For now, he only knew one thing. His new life had begun. And he intended to use it differently. He would not spend another 60 years watching his dreams die. This time, he would build, he would cultivate, he would invent, and if the martial world stood in his way, he would build an empire strong enough to crush it. End of Chapter 2. The Elder Reborn. Lapu-Lapu. Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 3 The Hidden Forge. The mountains had always been forbidden. Every child of the Bakwit tribe knew this. The elders called them the Sleeping Peaks. No hunter was allowed to cross beyond the third ridge. No farmer was permitted to collect herbs from the upper valleys. And no warrior was brave enough to explore the ancient forests that covered their slopes. According to tribal legends, something slept beneath those mountains. A monster, a god, or perhaps something worse. Lapu-Lapu had never believed in legends. But he had learned one important lesson since arriving in this strange world. Legends often contained a fragment of truth. And after the events of the previous night, he was certain of one thing. Something was calling him. 3 days had passed since the Black Fang Boar attack. The tribe was celebrating. The beast's meat would feed the village for weeks. Its hide could be turned into armor. Its bones could become weapons. Even its blood was valuable to the tribe's herbalists. But Lapu-Lapu wasn't interested in the beast. He was interested in something else. The strange energy inside his body. Chi. For 3 days, he had experimented with it. The results were disappointing. He could barely sense it. When he tried to control it directly, it disappeared. When he forced it, his body became painful. When he relaxed, nothing happened. Annoying. Lapu Lapu sat beside the river. In his previous life, he had always possessed instruments. Thermometers, pressure gauges, oscilloscopes, computers, sensors. Now he had none of those things. He had only his body. And his brain. He needed to understand the system. Chi behaves like energy. Asterisk. But it isn't exactly energy. Asterisk. He closed his eyes. The world became quiet. He could hear the river, the birds, the wind. Then, there it was, a faint sensation, like warmth. Lapu Lapu focused. The sensation grew stronger. His breathing slowed. The chi moved through his body. Then suddenly, it stopped. Lapu Lapu opened his eyes. He understood. Flow. Chi needed to flow. Just like electricity. Just like water. Just like air. If blocked, pressure built. If forced, the system failed. But if properly directed, the energy could do incredible things. Lapu Lapu smiled. Everything has engineering principles. He stood. The mountains waited. That afternoon, Lapu Lapu visited the tribal chief. Datu Makatuna was inside the longhouse. Several elders were discussing the future. The recent attack had changed everything. The Black Fang boar had been only a single beast. But there was a more serious problem. The tribe's food supply was still vulnerable. Their weapons were poor. Their warriors lacked training. Their population was small. Lapu Lapu listened quietly. Then he spoke. We need walls. The elders turned. One elder frowned. Why? Because something attacked us. That was a beast. Next time, it could be people. Silence. Lapu Lapu continued. Our tribe is weak. The chief frowned. We have warriors. Not enough. We have weapons. Not good enough. We have the forest. That will not stop an army. The elders exchanged glances. Lapu Lapu pointed toward the village. Your homes are scattered. Your food storage is unprotected. Your blacksmith workshop is made of wood. If an enemy attacks at night, they can burn half the village before the warriors organize. The chief's expression became serious. What do you suggest? A defensive wall. Made from what? Earth first. Lapu Lapu explained his plan. A compact earth wall surrounding the village. Watchtowers. Controlled. Entrances. A central storage facility. A dedicated forge. The tribe would become a fortified settlement. The elders were skeptical, but the chief agreed. Build it. Lapu Lapu smiled. Good. Then he added. We also need a road. The elders stared. Why? Because I need to reach the mountains. The chief's expression changed. No. The answer was immediate. Lapu Lapu remained calm. Why? Because the mountains are forbidden. Why? The chief didn't answer. Chief. Finally, the old warrior spoke. Our ancestors went there, and they never returned. Lapu Lapu looked toward the distant peaks. That isn't a reason. The chief's eyes hardened. It's enough of one. Lapu Lapu realized something. The elders knew more than they were saying. He bowed. Very well. He turned to leave. The chief stopped him. Lapu. Yes. Don't go there. Lapu Lapu smiled. I won't. The chief relaxed. Then Lapu Lapu continued. Today. The chief's face darkened. The next morning, Lapu Lapu left the village. Alone. He carried a spear, a knife, a water container, and a small bag of food. His destination was the mountains. The journey took 6 hours. The forest became increasingly dense. The trees grew larger. The air became colder. Strange insects crawled across the roots. Lapu Lapu stopped several times to examine them. Some possessed faint spiritual energy. Interesting. Asterisk. The ecosystem itself was different from Earth. Animals were stronger. Plants contained chi. Even the soil seemed richer. He collected samples. Roots. Leaves. Minerals. Everything could be useful. Then he heard something. A growl. Lapu Lapu turned. 3 creatures emerged from the trees. They resembled wolves, but each was the size of a small horse. Their fur was dark gray. Their eyes glowed red. Ironback wolves. Lapu Lapu slowly reached for his spear. 3 against 1. Bad odds. He examined the terrain. Trees. Rocks. Slope. Wind. He needed a plan. The wolves attacked. Lapu Lapu moved. The first wolf lunged. He stepped aside. The second attacked from behind. Lapu Lapu spun. His spear struck the animal's throat. It fell. The third wolf charged. Lapu Lapu grabbed a branch. Pulled himself upward. The wolf crashed into a tree. Lapu Lapu landed behind it. His spear pierced its skull. The last wolf hesitated. Lapu Lapu stared at it. The animal growled, then fled. Lapu Lapu lowered his spear. He breathed heavily. That was. He looked at the dead wolves. Too close. He examined his body. His muscles were stronger. His reactions faster. The chi had helped him. But barely. I need proper cultivation. Asterisk. Then he noticed something. The wolf's corpse was glowing. A small crystal had formed inside its skull. Lapu Lapu picked it up. A spirit core. He studied it. Energy pulsed within. His engineer's mind immediately became fascinated. An energy storage medium. Asterisk. He smiled. This world has batteries. The sun was setting when Lapu Lapu reached the mountain. The golden symbol from his dreams appeared again. It was carved into the stone. A circle. Inside it, a hammer crossed with a spear. Lapu Lapu placed his hand against it. Nothing happened. He pushed. Nothing. He tried chi. The moment his chi touched the symbol. Boom. The mountain shook. Lapu Lapu stumbled backward. A crack appeared. Then another. The massive stone door began opening. Dust filled the air. Lapu Lapu stared. Well, he tightened his grip on his spear. That's definitely not natural. He entered. The tunnel descended. Deeper and deeper. The walls were covered in glowing inscriptions. Lapu Lapu studied them. They weren't exactly writing. They were diagrams, energy circuits, mechanical structures, symbols representing chi flow. His eyes widened. This isn't a temple. He looked around. It's a workshop. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Lapu Lapu stopped. His breath caught. The chamber was enormous. Hundreds of meters wide. Mechanical structures filled the room. Gears, pistons, massive furnaces, crane systems, conveyor mechanisms. Everything was made from an unknown black metal. And somehow, it was still working. Slowly, ancient machinery moved. Clank, clank, clank. A massive mechanical arm rotated overhead. Lapu Lapu stared in disbelief. This civilization, he walked forward, had advanced machinery. He examined the components. The design was brilliant. Some mechanisms were beyond anything he had seen on Earth. Others were crude, primitive. The technology was inconsistent, like someone had mastered certain principles but ignored others. Then he found the central forge. A massive furnace stood at the heart of the chamber. It was cold, yet the surrounding metal remained warm. Lapu Lapu approached. A voice echoed, "Greater than, who enters the heavenly forge?" Lapu Lapu froze. He looked around. "Show yourself." A figure appeared. An old man, transparent, wearing ancient armor. His long hair floated around him. Lapu Lapu raised his spear. The old man laughed. "Greater than, relax, child. Who are you?" "Greater than, I was once called many things." The spirit raised his hand. "Greater than, master. Greater than, emperor. Greater than, god of the forge." Lapu Lapu stared. The old man smiled. "Greater than, but you may call me Mo Tien." Lapu Lapu lowered his spear slightly. "You're dead." They laughed. "Greater than, very observant. I'm an engineer." "Greater than, what's an engineer?" Lapu Lapu paused. He realized the word might not exist here. Someone who builds things. Mo Tien's expression changed. "Greater than, then perhaps. Greater than, you are worthy." Mo Tien explained everything. 10,000 years ago, the Heavenly Forge had belonged to the Celestial Mechanist Empire. A civilization that combined martial cultivation with mechanical engineering. Their warriors used mechanical armor. Their cities were powered by spiritual engines. Their ships sailed through the sky. Their weapons could destroy mountains. But the empire had fallen. The reason? The great sects feared them. The cultivators believed technology would eventually replace martial power. So they united, and destroyed the Celestial Mechanist Empire. Mo Tien had survived. Barely. He sealed the Heavenly Forge, waiting for someone worthy to inherit it. Lapu Lapu listened, then asked the obvious question. Why me? Mo Tian stared at him. Greater than, because you possess something rare. What? Greater than, a mind that asks why. Lapu Lapu frowned. Mo Tian continued. Greater than, most cultivators ask. Greater than, how can I become stronger? Greater than, you asked. Greater than, how does this work? Lapu Lapu smiled. That's the difference between warriors and engineers. Mo Tian laughed. Greater than, exactly. Then the old spirit raised his hand. The entire chamber came alive. Hundreds of mechanisms activated. Gears turned. Furnaces ignited. Lights appeared. Lapu Lapu stared. His heart raced. He felt like a child again. Not because he was young, but because he had discovered something new. Something impossible. Something worth building. Mo Tian offered him a choice. Greater than, become my successor. Lapu Lapu looked around. What do I get? The old spirit blinked. Greater than, what? What do I get? Mo Tian laughed loudly. Greater than, you truly are strange. Then he pointed toward the forge. Greater than, knowledge. Toward the machines. Greater than, technology. Toward the weapons. Greater than, power. Then toward the endless workshop. Greater than, and the inheritance of the celestial mechanist empire. Lapu Lapu thought about it. He remembered his previous life. He had spent 68 years building machines. But he had always been limited. Limited by money, governments, companies, politics. Now, he had a world where chi existed. Spirit beasts, cultivation, ancient technology, and an entire civilization waiting to be rebuilt. Lapu Lapu smiled. I accept. Mo Tian's expression became serious. Greater than, then you must understand the price. What price? Greater than, the martial world will eventually come for you. Lapu Lapu stared. Mo Tian continued. Greater than, the moment you awaken this forge. Greater than, the great sects will sense you. Greater than, the ancient clans will hunt you. Greater than, the kingdoms will fear you. Greater than, and the emperors will want your head. Lapu Lapu smiled. How long do I have? Mo Tian frowned. Greater than, perhaps 10 years. Lapu Lapu laughed. Then I have 10 years to prepare. Mo Tian stared, then smiled. Greater than, good. The ancient spirit raised his hand. A golden symbol appeared. It entered Lapu Lapu's chest. Pain exploded. Lapu Lapu screamed. His body collapsed. Chi surged through his meridians. But this time, it didn't stop. The energy moved through his body. His bones strengthened. His muscles hardened. His blood became hotter. A golden furnace appeared inside his spiritual sea. The first stage of the heavenly forge scripture had begun. Hours later, Lapu Lapu opened his eyes. The chamber was silent. He slowly stood. His body felt different, stronger, lighter, more precise. Mo Tian floated beside him. Greater than, you have entered the first stage of body tempering. Lapu Lapu clenched his fist. The air cracked. He stared. That. Mo Tian smiled. Greater than, welcome to the martial world. Lapu Lapu looked at the ancient machinery. Then at the forge. Then toward the distant surface. He thought about his tribe. The irrigation system. The weak weapons. The poor houses. The lack of education. The fragile future. Then he looked at the heavenly forge. He understood. This wasn't just a workshop. It was the foundation. The foundation of something much larger. Lapu Lapu walked toward a massive blueprint table. A strange piece of parchment appeared. He picked it up. The blueprint showed a machine. A machine that could transform heat into mechanical power. Lapu Lapu's eyes widened. Steam. Mo Tian stared at him. Greater than, you know this. Lapu Lapu smiled. Yes. He placed the blueprint on the table. Then he picked up a piece of charcoal. He began drawing. Pistons, cylinders, boilers, gears, valves, pressure chambers. Mo Tian watched silently. Lapu Lapu continued. His mind raced. The first invention. The first machine. The beginning of industrialization. He wrote a title at the top of the blueprint. Project 1. The Heavenly Steam Engine. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. The martial world had not yet noticed the birth of a new empire. But deep beneath the earth, a 16-year-old boy had just begun building it. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient was watching. A pair of golden eyes opened. A voice whispered, "Greater than, the heavenly forge has awakened. Greater than, kill the inheritor." End of Chapter 3. Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 4. The First Machine. For 3 days, Lapu Lapu did not return to the Bakwit tribe. Nobody knew where he had gone. The villagers assumed he was hunting. The chief suspected something else. Datu Makatuna stood outside the village, staring toward the distant mountains. He went there. Beside him stood Tandong Guro, the tribe's blacksmith. The Forbidden Mountains. The chief nodded. Goro's face became pale. "Then we must send warriors." "No, chief. If he went there, warriors will not bring him back." "Then what do we do?" The old chief looked toward the mountains. "We wait." Guro frowned. "You aren't worried?" The chief sighed. "I am." He remembered the warning his own grandfather had given him. Never enter the sleeping peaks. Never disturb what lies beneath. And now, a 16-year-old boy had gone there alone. Deep underground, Lapu Lapu was discovering a new world. The heavenly forge was enormous. It wasn't merely a workshop. It was an entire industrial complex. There were furnaces, foundries, machine rooms, storage chambers, laboratories, weapon workshops, and something Lapu Lapu found particularly interesting. A massive library. Unfortunately, most of it was useless. The books had been destroyed by time. Many were written in ancient scripts he couldn't understand. But Mo Tien remained. The ancient spirit could translate the important parts. And Lapu Lapu absorbed knowledge at an astonishing speed. Metallurgy, mechanical engineering, spirit formations, chi conduction, energy storage, material science, weapons engineering. The Celestial Mechanist Empire had developed technologies far beyond what Lapu Lapu had seen in his previous life. But their civilization had one fundamental advantage. Chi. Their machines didn't rely solely on heat. They used spiritual energy. A simple mechanical device could become extraordinarily powerful when combined with a chi formation. A metal blade could become sharper. A cannon could become stronger. A furnace could burn hotter. A machine could run indefinitely. The possibilities were endless. Yet Lapu Lapu had a problem. He didn't have enough resources. The heavenly forge had survived 10,000 years. But its raw materials were almost gone. Lapu Lapu stared at an empty storage room. "This is going to be difficult." Mo Tien floated beside him. "What is everything? You possess the greatest forge in the continent." "Yes. You have my knowledge." "Yes. You possess the inheritance of an ancient empire." "Yes." Mo Tien smiled. "Then why are you complaining?" Lapu Lapu pointed at the empty shelves. "Because I have no iron." Mo Tien blinked. Lapu Lapu pointed toward another empty room. "No coal." Another. "No copper." Another. "No food." He turned. "And I'm hungry." Mo Tien stared, then began laughing. "Ah, I see. You have inherited an empire. But you haven't inherited its economy." Lapu Lapu sighed. "Exactly." He looked toward the exit. "I need to go home." Before leaving, Lapu Lapu spent one final day examining the heavenly forge. He discovered something hidden beneath the central workshop. A massive underground chamber. At its center stood a strange metal pillar. The pillar was covered in glowing symbols. Mo Tien became serious. "Don't touch that." Lapu Lapu immediately stopped. "Why?" "Because that is the core of the forge. Power source. Something like that. How does it work?" "I don't know." Lapu Lapu stared. "You don't know?" Mo Tien shook his head. "Even I never fully understood it." That answer fascinated Lapu Lapu. He approached. The pillar hummed. His body reacted. The golden furnace within his spiritual sea suddenly became hot. Lapu Lapu placed his hand on the pillar. The world disappeared. He saw a city. A massive city. Thousands of buildings rose toward the sky. Airships floated between towers. Mechanical constructs walked through streets. Railways crossed the land. Massive machines powered by glowing crystals filled factories. Millions of people lived inside the city. Then, war. The sky turned red. Millions of cultivators descended. Mountains exploded. Cities burned. Mechanical armies marched. The Celestial Mechanist Empire fought back. Lapu Lapu saw machines the size of mountains. Mechanical dragons. Spirit-powered warships. Flying fortresses. Weapons capable of destroying entire cities. But the enemy was too powerful. One by one, The machines fell. The city burned. The final image was a young woman standing before the central pillar. She placed her hand against it, then whispered, "If the empire falls, let the forge sleep, until someone worthy arrives." The vision ended. Lapu Lapu stumbled backward. Mo Tian stared at him. "What did you see?" Lapu Lapu looked at the pillar. "I think," he swallowed, "I saw the last day of your empire." Mo Tian's expression changed. For the first time, the ancient spirit looked sad. "Then you know." "Yes." "What did you see?" Lapu Lapu looked toward the ceiling. "Fear." Mo Tian frowned. "Not just from the cultivators." Lapu Lapu continued, "Your empire became too powerful." He looked at Mo Tian. "The world became afraid of what you could build." Mo Tian remained silent. Lapu Lapu smiled. "Then I'll do it differently." "How?" "I'll make sure the world needs us." Lapu Lapu returned to the surface. He emerged from the mountain 3 days after entering. The moment he reached the forest, a spear pointed at his face. "Lapu." He froze. 20 warriors surrounded him. Datu Makatuna stood at the front. The chief looked furious. "Where were you?" Lapu Lapu looked around. "Good morning." "Don't." "Good morning." "Me." The chief grabbed his arm. "Do you have any idea what you did?" "I went exploring." "You went into the Forbidden Mountains?" "Yes." "Why?" Lapu Lapu paused. "Curiosity." The chief stared. "You're 16. "Yes." "Act like it." Lapu Lapu almost laughed. "If only you knew." The chief looked toward the mountains. "What did you find?" Lapu Lapu became serious. "Nothing." The chief didn't believe him. But before he could ask more, Lapu Lapu felt something. A presence. He looked toward the forest. Someone was watching. He couldn't see them, but he could feel them. His cultivation was still weak. Yet the heavenly forge scripture had changed his senses. He whispered, "Someone is here." The warriors immediately raised their weapons. The forest became silent. Then, a black arrow flew from the trees. Whoosh! Lapu Lapu moved. The arrow passed his face. He grabbed it. A strange black symbol was carved into its shaft. Mo Tian's voice echoed inside his mind. "Black Serpent Sect." Lapu Lapu's expression changed. "Who?" "Enemies." A second arrow flew. This time, it was aimed at the chief. Lapu Lapu threw his spear. Clang! The spear knocked the arrow aside. The warriors charged into the forest. But their enemies were already gone. The chief stared at Lapu Lapu. Who were they? Lapu Lapu looked at the black arrow. I don't know. But he knew one thing. The heavenly forge had already been discovered. The next morning, Lapu Lapu began his first project. The tribe gathered around him. A strange machine stood in the center of the village. It looked ridiculous. A metal cylinder, a large wooden wheel, several pipes, a crude boiler, dozens of gears. The villagers stared. "What is it?" Tandong Guro asked. "A machine." Guro frowned. "I know that." Lapu Lapu looked at him. "What do you think it does?" Guro stared. "Nothing." The villagers laughed. Lapu Lapu smiled. "Then let's find out." He had spent 2 weeks designing it. The materials were terrible. The metal was low quality. The manufacturing tolerances were poor. The boiler was inefficient. But it was enough. He called it the steam engine. The machine was connected to a massive water pump. The purpose was simple: replace human labor. Lapu Lapu filled the boiler. Started the fire. The villagers watched. Steam began building. The pressure increased. The pipes shook. Lapu Lapu checked the gauges. Almost. The machine rattled. Guro took a step backward. "Is it supposed to do that?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "No." Everyone stared at him. Lapu Lapu quickly added, "But I have calculated the probability of failure." "How high?" 30%. Guro immediately stepped away. Lapu Lapu laughed. "Relax." The pressure reached the required level. He opened the valve. Hiss. Steam exploded through the pipes. The piston moved. Once. Twice. 3 times. The massive wheel began turning. Slowly. Then faster. The water pump activated. Water began flowing uphill. The villagers screamed. "It works." The machine continued turning. Lapu Lapu stood silently. His heart was pounding. Not from excitement. From something deeper. He had built machines his entire life. But this was different. This machine was the beginning. It wasn't just a pump. It was proof. Proof that his knowledge could change this world. The chief approached. How much work can it do? Lapu Lapu looked at the machine. One machine can replace 20 workers. The chief stared. 20. Yes. And it doesn't get tired. No. Doesn't need food. No. Doesn't sleep. No. The chief looked at the machine. Then at Lapu Lapu. Build another. Lapu Lapu smiled. That's the plan. The next project was the forge. Lapu Lapu had discovered that the tribe's blacksmithing process was incredibly inefficient. The traditional furnace consumed enormous amounts of charcoal. Temperature control was poor. Metal quality varied wildly, so he introduced a new design. A blast furnace. He built larger bellows, improved airflow, created temperature control mechanisms, designed better charcoal production. Then, he added a tiny chi formation. The formation enhanced airflow. The furnace temperature increased dramatically. Tandang Guro stared. The iron inside began glowing white. What? Lapu Lapu smiled. Now, he removed the molten metal. The blacksmiths watched in disbelief. The resulting steel was stronger, harder, more consistent. Lapu Lapu handed the finished piece to Guro. The old blacksmith struck it with a hammer. Clang. The hammer bounced. Goro's eyes widened. This. He struck it again. Clang. No crack. No deformation. Guro looked at Lapu Lapu. Where did you learn this? Lapu Lapu smiled. From an old friend. Within months, the Bakwit tribe changed. The irrigation system increased food production. The steam pump provided reliable water. The improved furnace created high-quality steel. The tribe began producing better tools, better weapons, better buildings. Lapu Lapu created workshops, then factories. Small ones at first. A woodworking shop, a metalworking shop, a textile workshop, a pottery workshop. Each had specialized workers. Each used improved tools. Each became more efficient. The villagers didn't understand what was happening, but they saw the results. Food became abundant. Houses improved. Trade increased. People from neighboring tribes began arriving. They brought herbs, animal hides, spirit stones. In exchange, they received tools and weapons. Lapu Lapu watched the marketplace grow. He understood something important. Technology alone wasn't enough. He needed an economy. And an economy required trade. Trade required roads. Roads required security. Security required an army. An army required resources. Everything was connected. A civilization was a machine. And every machine needed a system. Lapu Lapu began designing one. 6 months after his return from the Heavenly Forge, the Bakwit tribe was no longer the weakest tribe in the region. It was becoming the strongest. But power attracted attention. The first warning arrived in the form of a messenger. A man wearing black armor entered the village. He carried the symbol of the Black Wolf clan. The messenger approached the chief. By order of the Black Wolf clan, the village became silent. Your tribe will provide 50% of your harvest. The chief's expression darkened. And if we refuse, the messenger smiled, then you will provide 100%. The warriors reached for their weapons. Lapu Lapu stood nearby. He watched. The messenger noticed him. You. Lapu Lapu looked up. I heard you're the genius behind these machines. Lapu Lapu said nothing. The messenger walked closer. Your inventions belong to the Black Wolf clan now. Lapu Lapu finally smiled. No. The messenger frowned. No. No. The man laughed. Do you know who you're speaking to? Yes. Then you know the Black Wolf clan has 300 warriors. Yes. 20 martial artists. Yes. And a body tempering expert. Lapu Lapu's smile disappeared. The messenger leaned forward. You have nothing. Lapu Lapu looked around. The villagers. The workshops. The fields. The machines. The forge. Then he looked back. You're wrong. The messenger frowned. What? Lapu Lapu stepped forward. I have something. What? Lapu Lapu's eyes became cold. Time. The messenger laughed. You think this is a game? No. Lapu Lapu turned away. I'm giving you 3 days. The messenger froze. 3 days for what? Lapu Lapu looked back. To decide whether you want to become our enemy. The messenger's face darkened. And if we do? Lapu Lapu smiled. Then come. The messenger left. The chief stared at him. What have you done? Lapu Lapu looked toward the workshops. Then toward the walls that were still under construction. He spoke quietly. Now we find out. Weather technology can defeat the martial world. That night, Lapu Lapu returned to his workshop. He opened a wooden box. Inside was a strange black metal. A fragment from the heavenly forge. He placed it on the table. Then he began designing. Not a sword, not a spear, not armor. Something different. Something that could change warfare. A tube, a chamber, a firing mechanism, a projectile, then, a powder mixture. Lapu Lapu stared at the design. His previous life had taught him something. The greatest inventions weren't always the most complicated. Sometimes, the simplest idea changed everything. He wrote 3 words on the blueprint. Project 2. The Thunder Cannon. Outside, thunder echoed across the southern wilderness. Lapu Lapu looked toward the distant mountains. The Black Wolf clan was coming. The Black Serpent sect was watching. The ancient forge had awakened. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the martial world was beginning to notice the existence of a strange young genius. A boy who couldn't cultivate properly. A boy who had been bullied. A boy who came from a weak tribe. But behind that boy was the mind of an old engineer. And now, he had an ancient civilization's technology at his fingertips. Lapu Lapu smiled. Come, let's see how strong your martial arts are. Against the power of industry. End of Chapter 4. Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 5. Thunder against the martial world. 3 days. That was the amount of time Lapu Lapu had given the Black Wolf clan. 3 days to decide whether they wanted to become enemies. In hindsight, perhaps it had been arrogant. Perhaps it had been foolish. Perhaps a 16-year-old boy who had lived only a few months in this world should not have challenged a clan that possessed hundreds of warriors and a body-tempering expert. But Lapu Lapu was not truly 16. Inside his young body lived the mind of a 68-year-old engineer. He had already died once. He had already lost everything once. Fear had very little power over him now. Besides, Lapu Lapu had learned something during his first life. When faced with a problem, there were only 3 possibilities. Solve it, adapt to it, or change the entire system so the problem no longer exists. The Black Wolf clan was a problem. Lapu Lapu intended to change the system. ###. ### The War Council. The tribal council gathered inside the largest longhouse. Datu Makatuna sat at the center. Around him were the elders, hunters, blacksmiths, farmers, and warriors. Lapu Lapu stood before them. A wooden table had been placed in the middle of the room. Spread across it were maps. Crude maps, but maps nonetheless. The first showed the Bakwit settlement. The second showed the surrounding forest. The third showed the territory controlled by the Black Wolf clan. Lapu Lapu pointed at the map. They will attack from here. One elder frowned. How do you know? Because this is the only practical route. Lapu Lapu tapped the map. The eastern mountains are too steep. He moved his finger. The northern forest is filled with spiritual beasts. Then he pointed south. This is the easiest approach. The chief nodded. You're right. Lapu Lapu continued. Their warriors will likely travel in 3 groups. The elders exchanged looks. Why? Because 300 men cannot travel together through dense forest efficiently. He drew 3 lines. The first group will scout. The second will carry supplies. The third will contain the main fighting force. One elder shook his head. You're assuming they will attack us like an army. They won't. Then why? Because they aren't an army. Lapu Lapu looked at them. They're a clan. The difference was important. An army was organized. A clan was not. The Black Wolf clan relied on martial strength. They had powerful individuals, but they had no standardized logistics. No organized supply chain. No military doctrine. No engineering corps. No battlefield communication. No artillery. Lapu Lapu smiled. They're strong. He pointed at the map. But they're not prepared for war. Datu Makatuna leaned forward. Then what are we? Lapu Lapu looked at him. Not an army. The chief frowned. Then what? Lapu Lapu placed his hand on the map. A machine. ###. The birth of the Iron Army. The first thing Lapu Lapu changed was the way the warriors trained. Traditionally, Bakwit warriors trained individually. Every man carried his own weapon. Every hunter developed his own fighting style. There was no standard equipment. No ranks. No formations. No commands. Lapu-Lapu immediately abolished the system. The warriors were divided into units. 10 men per squad, 5 squads per company. Each squad had a leader. Every warrior received standardized equipment. A spear, a short sword, a shield, a helmet, a leather vest reinforced with steel plates. The equipment was not impressive, but it was consistent. Lapu-Lapu also introduced something that confused everyone. Drills. Again, 20 warriors moved. Left, they moved. Right, they moved. Forward, the formation advanced. Stop, everyone stopped. Turn, the entire group turned simultaneously. At first, it was terrible. Some men moved too early. Others too late. Some walked into each other. Several warriors fell, but Lapu-Lapu did not give up. He had spent decades training workers in factories. He understood something simple. Humans were terrible at learning complicated systems individually. But groups became extremely effective when everyone followed the same process. Repetition, standardization, discipline. After 2 weeks, the difference was obvious. The Bakwit warriors were still weaker individually, but they were becoming stronger collectively. Lapu-Lapu created specialized units. Spearmen, shield bearers, archers, scouts, engineers. He even created a small group of men responsible for transporting supplies. The warriors laughed when they first heard the word. Engineers. What's an engineer? Lapu-Lapu answered simply. People who make sure everyone else has what they need to fight. The laughter stopped, because that was exactly what an army needed. Dash dash dash. Hash hash the first thunder cannon. While the warriors trained, Lapu-Lapu worked. The workshop remained active day and night. The first problem was gunpowder. Lapu-Lapu remembered the basic principles from Earth. But he lacked proper materials. The sulfur was impure. The charcoal was inconsistent. The saltpeter had to be processed. His first mixture failed. The second failed. The third exploded. Boom. The entire workshop shook. Lapu-Lapu flew backward. He landed in a pile of straw. Tandang Guro stared at him. Are you alive? Lapu-Lapu coughed. Yes. The blacksmith looked at the smoking table. Should we be concerned? Lapu-Lapu stood. Extremely. He examined the remains. The mixture had burned too quickly. The pressure hadn't been contained. The result was useless. But Lapu-Lapu smiled. Good. Guro stared. Good. We know what doesn't work. That's good. Yes. The old blacksmith shook his head. You're insane. Probably. Lapu-Lapu returned to work. The next attempt lasted longer. The next one longer still. Eventually, he developed a crude black powder. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't stable. But it worked. The second problem was the barrel. Lapu-Lapu needed metal capable of containing enormous pressure. Ordinary iron would crack. Poor quality steel would deform. He used the black metal fragment from the Heavenly Forge. It was incredibly strong. But there was a problem. He only had a small amount. So he used it as a reinforcing core. Ordinary steel surrounded the inner layer. The result was a hybrid barrel. The third problem was accuracy. Lapu-Lapu solved that with a simple design. The fourth problem was mobility. He solved it with wheels. After weeks of work, the machine was complete. The Bakwit tribe gathered in an open field. The weapon stood on a wooden platform. It was ugly, crude, massive, a thick metal tube mounted on 2 wheels. Beside it stood Lapu-Lapu. Datu Makatuna approached. What does it do? Lapu-Lapu looked at the cannon. It makes noise. The chief stared. That's all. No. Lapu-Lapu smiled. It also destroys things. Dash dash dash. The target was a massive stone. It stood 300 meters away. Lapu-Lapu checked the cannon. The powder. The projectile. The barrel. Everything was ready. He turned. Everyone moved behind the wall. The chief frowned. Why? Because I'm not entirely sure this won't explode. The chief immediately moved. Lapu-Lapu smiled. The villagers followed. He lit the fuse. Then ran. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, boom. The entire valley shook. Birds exploded from the trees. Smoke filled the field. The villagers screamed. When the smoke cleared, the stone was gone. Not cracked. Not broken. Gone. Fragments covered the ground. Silence. Nobody spoke. Datu Makatuna slowly turned toward Lapu-Lapu. What? He pointed. What was that? Lapu-Lapu looked at the cannon. A weapon. The chief stared. One shot. Yes. That can kill a warrior. Lapu Lapu considered. Depending on the warrior. The chief frowned. Even a cultivator. Perhaps. The chief's expression changed. Lapu Lapu saw it. The old warrior understood. This wasn't simply a weapon. It was the beginning of a new age. Dash dash dash. Hash hash. The Black Wolf clan arrives. On the morning of the third day. The scouts returned. They're coming. Lapu Lapu was standing beside the village wall. How many? At least 200. More behind them. Any cultivators? The scout hesitated. Yes. How many? 4. Lapu Lapu's expression remained calm. Realm. The scout looked confused. Realm. Lapu Lapu realized. The tribe had no standardized martial ranking. He changed the question. How strong? 3 are body-tempering warriors. The scout swallowed. The leader is stronger. Datu Makatuna stepped forward. How strong? The scout looked frightened. Chi gathering. The warriors became nervous. Even the chief's expression darkened. A chi gathering cultivator was far beyond ordinary warriors. Lapu Lapu's mind began calculating. The enemy had numerical superiority, martial superiority, experience, and likely better weapons. But they had weaknesses. Lapu Lapu looked at the walls. The new walls were unfinished. Not ideal, but sufficient. The enemy would need to approach through the forest. The ground had been prepared. The artillery positions were ready. The warriors were trained. The ammunition had been prepared. Lapu Lapu smiled. Good. Datu Makatuna looked at him. Good. They came. The chief frowned. Why are you happy? Lapu Lapu looked toward the forest. Because now, we can test everything. Dash dash dash. The Black Wolf clan appeared at noon. Their banners moved between the trees. Hundreds of warriors. Black armor. Long spears. Bows. Axes. At their center rode a massive man. He wore wolf skin armor. His face was covered in scars. This was Chief Rakan, the leader of the Black Wolf clan. Beside him were 4 cultivators. Rakan stopped before the Bakwit walls. He laughed. Is this it? The Black Wolf warriors laughed. The Bakwit warriors remained silent. Rakan raised his voice. Where is the boy? Lapu Lapu stepped onto the wall. Here. Rakan looked up, then laughed. You. Lapu Lapu nodded. You threatened my clan. Rakan smiled. Your clan. Lapu Lapu's eyes narrowed. Yes. Rakan looked around. You have 100 warriors. 200. Rakan laughed. 200 weaklings. He pointed. I have 300. 280. Rakan frowned. Lapu Lapu shrugged. We counted the scouts. The Black Wolf warriors became silent. Rakan stared. Lapu Lapu continued. You have 20 men carrying supplies. Rakan's face changed. Your eastern flank has 12 archers. Silence. You have 6 horses. Rakan's hand tightened around his weapon. And your strongest cultivator, Lapu Lapu pointed at the chi-gathering warrior, is standing too close to your own army. The warrior's eyes narrowed. Rakan stared. Who told you this? Lapu Lapu smiled. I have eyes. Rakan raised his hand. Enough. He pointed at the walls. Your tribe has something I want. Lapu Lapu said nothing. Your machines. The chief's expression changed. Rakan continued. Give them to me. No. Rakan laughed. Then I'll take them. Lapu Lapu nodded. That's what I expected. Rakan raised his hand. The Black Wolf warriors prepared to attack. Lapu Lapu raised his own hand. Wait. Rakan frowned. What? Lapu Lapu pointed toward the forest. You should move your men. Rakan looked around. Why? Because you're standing on a road. Rakan laughed. So. Lapu Lapu smiled. It's a very important road. Rakan looked down. Then, the ground exploded. Boom. The first Black Wolf warriors were thrown into the air. The tribe had planted underground traps. Not explosives. Pit traps. Hidden trenches. The front ranks fell. The formation collapsed. Attack. The Bakwit archers fired. Arrows rained down. The Black Wolf warriors raised shields. Then, Lapu Lapu shouted. First cannon. Boom. The cannon fired. The projectile tore through the enemy formation. The Black Wolf warriors screamed. Rakan stared. What? Another cannon fired. Boom. Then another. Boom. The forest became chaos. Smoke. Dust. Screams. The Black Wolf warriors had never seen anything like it. Their martial strength meant nothing. They couldn't fight an enemy they couldn't reach. Rakan shouted, "Advance!" The Black Wolf warriors charged. Lapu Lapu gave another order. Second line. The Bakwit soldiers raised their shields. Behind them, crossbowmen fired. The bolts struck, then reloaded, then fired again. The Black Wolf warriors reached the wall. The battle became close combat. And for the first time, the Bakwit warriors were forced to fight. The enemy was stronger, much stronger, but the Bakwit formation held. Shield, spear, shield, spear. One enemy fell, another. The Black Wolf warriors tried to break through. The formation refused. Lapu Lapu watched from the wall. His eyes were cold. This was the moment when theory became reality. His machines had worked. His training had worked. His army was working. Dash dash dash. Then the chi-gathering cultivator moved. He was called Rakan's blade. His body exploded with spiritual energy. He jumped 20 meters. He landed on the wall. The Bakwit warriors froze. The cultivator smiled. Technology. He raised his sword. Pathetic. He swung. 3 warriors were thrown backward. Lapu Lapu's eyes narrowed. The cultivator advanced. 1 warrior attacked. The cultivator killed him. Another. Dead. Lapu Lapu realized the problem. Technology isn't enough. Asterisk. He grabbed his spear. The cultivator turned. Their eyes met. You. Lapu Lapu stepped forward. The cultivator laughed. You're the inventor. Yes. I'll kill you first. The cultivator attacked. Fast. Too fast. Lapu Lapu barely dodged. The sword cut his arm. Blood appeared. Pain exploded. Lapu Lapu stepped backward. The cultivator attacked again. Lapu Lapu blocked. Clang. His spear broke. He threw the broken weapon away. The cultivator laughed. You're weak. Lapu Lapu smiled. Yes. The cultivator frowned. Then why are you smiling? Lapu Lapu stepped backward. Toward the cannon. The cultivator followed. You think your machines can save you? No. Lapu Lapu looked behind him. Not mine. The cultivator stopped. A massive mechanical structure stood behind Lapu Lapu. It wasn't a cannon. It was something new. Lapu Lapu had built it specifically for this battle. A compressed air launcher. A crude weapon, but powerful. The cultivator's eyes widened. Lapu Lapu pulled the lever. Boom. The projectile struck the cultivator. He flew backward. He crashed through the wall. The entire battlefield stopped. Lapu Lapu stared. The cultivator slowly stood. His armor was destroyed. Blood flowed from his mouth. But he was alive. Lapu Lapu's expression became serious. So that's the difference. Asterisk. A normal cannon could hurt a cultivator, but not guarantee victory. He needed something better. The cultivator roared. Chi exploded from his body. He charged. Lapu Lapu didn't move. He waited. The cultivator raised his sword. Then, a gunshot echoed. Bang. The cultivator stopped. A small hole appeared in his forehead. He collapsed. Silence. Lapu Lapu slowly lowered the weapon. In his hands was a crude firearm. The first spirit-assisted rifle. The projectile had been reinforced with a tiny chi formation. The weapon wasn't powerful enough to destroy a cultivator directly. But the cultivator had been injured. His defenses were weakened, and the weapon had been aimed at his head. Lapu Lapu stared at the fallen man. The battlefield became silent. Then the Black Wolf warriors began retreating. Rakan shouted, "Don't run!" But nobody listened. Their strongest warrior was dead. Their formation was broken. Their enemies possessed weapons that could kill cultivators. The Black Wolf clan fled. The Bakwit warriors cheered. Lapu Lapu didn't. He looked toward the forest. The battle had been won. But the war had only begun. Dash dash dash. Hash hash the price of victory. By sunset, the Black Wolf clan had disappeared. The Bakwit tribe had won. But victory came at a cost. 37 warriors were dead. More than 50 were injured. Lapu Lapu walked through the field. He looked at the bodies. The warriors who had trained under him. People he knew. People who had believed in him. His hands tightened. Technology could save lives. But technology could also kill. That night, Lapu Lapu stood alone beside the river. Datu Makatuna approached. "You won." Lapu Lapu didn't answer. The chief stood beside him. "You saved the tribe." "Not everyone. The chief looked at him. You cannot save everyone. I know. Then why are you angry? Lapu-Lapu stared at the river. Because I know how this ends. The chief frowned. What? Every war. Lapu-Lapu looked at him. Today, we defeated a clan. Tomorrow, another clan will come. Then a sect. Then a kingdom. Then an empire. The chief was silent. Lapu-Lapu continued. Every victory makes us more powerful. And every increase in power makes someone else afraid. The chief finally understood. You think they'll come for us? No. Lapu-Lapu looked toward the mountains. I know they will. That night, Lapu-Lapu returned to the heavenly forge. Mo Tien was waiting. Greater than, you have tasted war. Lapu-Lapu nodded. Greater than, and, it was inefficient. Mo Tien blinked. Greater than, I beg your pardon. Lapu-Lapu began pacing. The enemy had no logistics. No standardized weapons. No communications. No medical system. No engineering core. No intelligence network. Mo Tien stared. Lapu-Lapu stopped. Technology 1. Greater than, yes, but barely. Mo Tien smiled. Greater than, you expected perfection. No. Lapu-Lapu looked at the ancient forge. I expected better. He walked toward the blueprint table. Then he began writing. The first document, Military Logistics System. The second, Military Medical Corps. The third, Engineering Corps. The fourth, Military Academy. The fifth, Standardized Weapon Production. Mo Tien watched. Greater than, what are you doing? Building an army. Greater than, you already have one. No. Lapu-Lapu shook his head. I have warriors. He looked at Mo Tien. I'm going to build soldiers. 3 months later, the Bakwit tribe had changed again. The walls were complete. The first factory had opened. The steel workshop operated day and night. A military academy had been established. Children were learning mathematics. Farmers were learning irrigation. Blacksmiths were learning metallurgy. The tribe had begun keeping written records. Trade routes were expanding. Merchants arrived from neighboring tribes. And in the center of the settlement, a massive black banner had been raised. It bore a new symbol. A hammer, a spear, and a gear. Lapu-Lapu stood beneath it. Datu Makatuna stood beside him. The chief looked at the growing settlement. What will you call this? Lapu-Lapu looked around. The tribe was no longer simply a tribe. It had become something else. Something new. Something dangerous. He thought about the ancient celestial mechanist empire. Then he thought about his own homeland. The Philippines. A land of islands. A land of warriors. A land that had survived centuries of hardship. His new world was different. But perhaps, he could bring something from his old life into his new one. He looked at the banner. Iron. The chief frowned. Iron. Yes. Why? Because iron is strong. Lapu-Lapu looked at the workshops. But it is also useful. The chief smiled. Then, Lapu-Lapu turned toward the mountains. The Iron Dominion. The chief's eyes widened. The name spread. First through the tribe. Then the neighboring villages. Then the entire southern wilderness. The weak Bakwit tribe had defeated the Black Wolf clan. A young inventor had killed a chi-gathering cultivator. And now, a new power had emerged. The Iron Dominion. Far away, inside a dark chamber, a man in black robes sat before a massive serpent statue. A kneeling disciple spoke. Master. The man opened his eyes. What news? The Black Wolf clan has fallen. The elder frowned. Who defeated them? The Bakwit tribe. Silence. The Bakwit tribe. Yes. Impossible. The disciple swallowed. They possess new weapons. What kind? Thunder weapons. The elder's eyes narrowed. Explain. They can kill body-tempering warriors. And, the disciple hesitated. They killed a chi-gathering cultivator. The elder stood. The room became cold. With what? We don't know. The elder stared toward the south. Then he smiled. Interesting. The Black Serpent sect had been searching for the heir of the Heavenly Forge. For 10,000 years. Now, they finally had a clue. Send a team. How many? The elder thought. 5. The disciple looked surprised. Only 5. The elder smiled. 5 is enough. He turned toward the serpent statue. After all, the boy is only 16. At the same time, Lapu-Lapu stood inside the Heavenly Forge. Before him was a new blueprint. A massive machine, much larger than the steam engine. Much more complicated. It required steel, copper, coal, precision machinery, and thousands of workers. At the top of the blueprint was a title. Project 3. The Iron Railway. Mo Tian stared. Greater than, what is that? Lapu Lapu smiled. The future. Greater than, what does it do? It connects the world. Mo Tian's eyes widened. Lapu Lapu continued. With roads, armies move. With rivers, goods move. With ships, nations trade. He placed his finger on the blueprint. But with railways, he smiled. An empire can move faster than anyone else. Mo Tian finally understood. Lapu Lapu wasn't merely inventing weapons. He wasn't merely building machines. He was building something much more dangerous. A civilization, a system, an empire. And once the Iron Dominion began connecting its cities with railways, the entire martial world would change. Lapu Lapu looked at the blueprint, then at the massive forge, then toward the distant horizon. He remembered his old life. He had died believing he had never changed the world. Now, he had another chance. But he had also learned something. The Black Wolf clan had been weak. The Black Serpent sect would be different. The sect had cultivators, powerful ones. They had spies, resources, ancient knowledge, and thousands of years of experience. Lapu Lapu's smile faded. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't foolish either. He needed allies. He needed resources. He needed stronger cultivators. He needed an economy. He needed an industrial base. And most importantly, he needed time. Unfortunately, time was the one thing his enemies were not willing to give him. Outside the heavenly forge, 5 black-robed figures moved through the forest. Their destination was the Iron Dominion. Their mission was simple: find the heir, capture him, and if capture proved impossible, kill him. Lapu Lapu looked toward the door. He felt something, a faint pressure, a warning from the heavenly forge. He smiled. Already, Mo Tian appeared beside him. Greater than, they've come. Lapu Lapu rolled up the railway blueprint. Then he picked up another. This one was different, much more ambitious. At the top was written, Project 4, the Spirit-Powered Industrial Revolution. Lapu Lapu looked toward the entrance. Then let's welcome them. He turned. Prepare the forge. Mo Tian smiled. Greater than, for battle. Lapu Lapu shook his head. No. He walked toward the workshop. For production. Outside, the 5 assassins entered the Iron Dominion. They had come expecting a primitive tribe. Instead, they found roads, factories, steel walls, military barracks, watchtowers, steam-powered machines, and thousands of people working under a new black banner. The assassins stopped. One of them whispered, "This place." It changed. Above them, a mechanical bell rang. Clang. The gates closed. Soldiers appeared on the walls. Cannons turned. Lapu Lapu's voice echoed across the settlement. Greater than, welcome to the Iron Dominion. The assassins looked upward. Lapu Lapu stood on the highest tower. He was still only 16. Still thin. Still young. But behind his eyes was the wisdom of 68 years. And in his hands was the power to reshape an entire world. He raised one hand. Begin. The cannons turned. Boom. And for the first time, the Black Serpent sect discovered that the martial world had changed. End of Chapter 5 Volume 1. Rise of the Iron Empire. Chapter 6 The 5 Shadows. The first cannon fired. Boom. The sound rolled across the Iron Dominion like thunder. Birds scattered from the surrounding forest. Workers abandoned their tools. Farmers froze in their fields. Children ran toward their homes. On the western road, 5 black-robed figures stood motionless. The cannonball tore through the trees behind them. It missed. Barely. The 5 figures stared at the smoke rising from the forest. One of them slowly turned. Was that, yes, an artillery weapon? The tallest man narrowed his eyes. Impossible. The Black Serpent sect had existed for more than 3,000 years. Its disciples had traveled across kingdoms. They had seen siege weapons. They had seen spirit cannons. They had even seen ancient mechanical weapons from forgotten ruins. But this was different. The weapon that had just fired at them had been crude. There was no visible spiritual formation. No obvious chi fluctuation. No spirit stone, yet its destructive power was enormous. The man smiled. Interesting. He stepped forward. Continue. Another cannon fired. Boom. This time, the 5 figures moved. The projectile passed between them. One assassin disappeared, then reappeared 20 meters away. Another jumped onto a tree. The third vanished into the forest. The fourth simply stood still. The fifth looked directly at the tower where Lapu Lapu stood. Their eyes met. Lapu Lapu's expression changed. Chi gathering. Asterisk. No. Stronger. Spirit foundation. The figure smiled. Lapu Lapu immediately understood. This was no ordinary assassin. The man was a cultivator far beyond his current realm. Mo Tian's voice echoed inside his mind. Greater than, danger. Lapu Lapu remained calm. How dangerous? Greater than, if I had my original body, I could kill him with one finger. Lapu Lapu frowned. That doesn't answer my question. Greater than, very. How very? Greater than, you cannot fight him. Lapu Lapu sighed. That's more useful. The man below raised his hand. A blade of spiritual energy appeared. He pointed it toward the tower. The weapon flew. Lapu Lapu moved. Boom. The spiritual blade struck the wall. Stone exploded. Lapu Lapu rolled across the platform. The tower shook. Fire. The cannons roared. The battlefield erupted. Dash dash dash. Hash hash the battle of the Iron Dominion. The 5 assassins moved like ghosts. Cannonballs missed. Crossbow bolts flew past them. Bullets struck the ground. But the cultivators were too fast. One assassin appeared behind a soldier. The soldier never saw him. A blade flashed. The assassin stopped. His sword had been blocked. A steel shield stood between them. The soldier holding it trembled. The cultivator smiled. Interesting. He struck again. The shield broke. But before he could attack, a spear struck his chest. The cultivator looked down. The spear had pierced his armor. He stared at the soldier. Then at the weapon. How? The soldier stepped backward. He didn't know. He had simply followed his training. The Iron Army surrounded the cultivator. 10 soldiers. Then 20. Then 30. The cultivator laughed. Numbers. Chi exploded from his body. The soldiers flew backward. The cultivator raised his sword. Then, bang. A bullet struck his shoulder. The cultivator staggered. Another. Bang. The bullet hit his leg. He fell. A soldier shouted. Fire. Dozens of rifles fired simultaneously. Bang. 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 The cultivator disappeared beneath smoke. When it cleared, he was dead. The soldiers stared, then cheered. But Lapu Lapu didn't celebrate. He had seen something. The weapons worked, but only when used together. A single rifle was weak. A single soldier was weak. But 100 soldiers were dangerous. Lapu Lapu smiled. Mass production. That was the true power of technology. Not the weapon. The system. Dash dash dash. At the eastern gate, another assassin attacked. This one was different. She moved silently. No one noticed her until she was already inside the fortress. Her name was Mei Shui. A core formation cultivator. She had been sent to observe. But she had underestimated the Iron Dominion. The moment she entered the city, a bell rang. Clang. She stopped. Another bell. Clang. Then another. Lights appeared on the walls. Mechanical searchlights. Mei Shui looked upward. What? A voice echoed. Target detected. Mei Shui's expression changed. The machine spoke. She moved. A mechanical turret rotated. Bang. She dodged. The projectile exploded behind her. She landed on a rooftop. More machines turned. Mei Shui frowned. This isn't a village. She moved again. A mechanical spider emerged from an alley. Its legs unfolded. Its body was made of black steel. A chi formation glowed on its back. The machine attacked. Mei Shui drew her sword. Clang. Her blade struck the machine. The mechanical spider barely moved. She attacked again. The armor cracked. The machine responded. A metal limb struck her. She flew backward. Mei Shui landed on the roof. Blood appeared on her lips. For the first time, she became serious. Interesting. She raised her sword. She exploded from her body. The mechanical spider charged. Mei Shui moved. Her sword flashed. The machine split in half. She landed. Then, a voice came from behind her. You killed my machine. Mei Shui turned. Lapu Lapu stood on the rooftop. Alone. The young boy looked at the destroyed machine. He sighed. That took 3 weeks to build. Mei Shui stared at him. You are Lapu Lapu. Yes. Come with me. No. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Mei Shui's eyes narrowed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Lapu Lapu smiled. You're a core formation cultivator. Mei Shui froze. How do you know? You have a spiritual aura. You're only at body tempering. Yes. And you dare speak to me like this? Yes. Mei Shui stared. Lapu Lapu looked at her. Because you're standing in my city. Silence. Then Mei Shui laughed. You're interesting. She attacked. Lapu Lapu barely survived the first strike. The sword passed within centimeters of his neck. He jumped backward. Mei Shui appeared again. Lapu Lapu ducked. The sword destroyed the wall behind him. Too fast. He couldn't keep up. His cultivation was far too weak. He couldn't win. Not directly. So he changed the problem. He ran. Mei Shui followed. Lapu Lapu jumped from the rooftop. Mei Shui followed. They landed in an alley. Lapu Lapu continued running. Mei Shui became annoyed. Stop. No. Fight me. Why? Because you're the heir. That's not a reason. You coward. Lapu Lapu glanced backward. Correct. Mei Shui almost stumbled. Lapu Lapu ran faster. He turned a corner. Then stopped. Mei Shui landed behind him. She raised her sword. Nowhere to run. Lapu Lapu smiled. Actually, the ground beneath Mei Shui opened. She fell. Crash. Lapu Lapu stepped toward the hole. A pit, 20 meters deep. Mei Shui landed at the bottom. She wasn't injured. She looked upward. Lapu Lapu waved. Goodbye. Mei Shui's face darkened. She jumped. Lapu Lapu immediately ran. Annoying. The chase continued through the city. Mei Shui destroyed 3 mechanical traps, 2 walls, a watchtower, and 1 very expensive machine. Lapu Lapu became increasingly irritated. Stop destroying my infrastructure. Mei Shui attacked. Lapu Lapu dodged. You started this. You invaded my city. Your city. Lapu Lapu stopped. Yes. Mei Shui froze. Lapu Lapu smiled. I built it. You were 16. Yes. How? Lapu Lapu shrugged. Hard work. Mei Shui stared. Then attacked again. This time, Lapu Lapu activated a switch. The ground opened. Mei Shui fell again. But this time, she didn't land in a pit. She landed in a massive chamber. The door closed. Mei Shui looked around. The room was dark. Then lights appeared. Lapu Lapu's voice echoed. Welcome. Mei Shui looked upward. What is this? My laboratory. The doors locked. Mei Shui attacked. Her sword struck the wall. Nothing happened. She attacked again. Still nothing. Lapu Lapu appeared behind a glass window. Mei Shui stared. You trapped me. Yes. Release me. No. You can't hold me. Probably not. Then why? Lapu Lapu smiled. Because I want to ask you questions. Mei Shui stared. What? Who sent you? Why? Because you attacked my city. Your city? Yes. Mei Shui sighed. You're obsessed with that. It's mine. Fine. She crossed her arms. Ask. Lapu Lapu sat. Black Serpent Sect. Yes. Why? The Heavenly Forge. Lapu Lapu became serious. How do you know about it? Mei Shui smiled. Your ancestor betrayed us. Lapu Lapu frowned. My ancestor. The Celestial Mechanist Empire. Lapu Lapu's eyes narrowed. Explain. Mei Shui shook her head. No. Lapu Lapu looked at her. Why? Because you're not ready. Lapu Lapu laughed. Everyone keeps saying that. Perhaps because it's true. Then tell me. Mei Shui remained silent. Lapu Lapu leaned forward. What does the Black Serpent Sect want? The Forge. Why? Because it can create weapons capable of killing immortals. Lapu Lapu paused. That was more serious than he expected. Immortals. Mei Shui nodded. The world above the Martial Saint realm. She looked at him. The Black Serpent Sect wants to control the Heavenly Forge. Lapu Lapu's expression became cold. And if I refuse? Mei Shui smiled. They will destroy you. Lapu Lapu looked around. At his laboratory. At his machines. At the city beyond. Then he smiled. They can try. The Black Serpent Sect's secret. Lapu Lapu had Mei Shui detained. Not tortured. Not harmed, simply detained. She was given food, a comfortable room, and strict instructions not to destroy anything. She seemed amused by the arrangement. You aren't going to interrogate me. No. Why? Because I don't need to. Mei Shui frowned. Lapu Lapu placed a map on the table. Your sect sent 5 assassins. Yes. 1 is dead. Yes. 2 are fighting my soldiers. Yes. You're trapped. Temporarily. Lapu Lapu smiled. And your leader is watching. Mei Shui's eyes changed. Lapu Lapu continued. Which means the Black Serpent sect isn't trying to kill me. Mei Shui said nothing. They're testing me. Silence. Lapu Lapu pointed at her. You're the test. Mei Shui's expression became serious. You are smarter than you look. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I'll take it anyway. Mei Shui sighed. The sect wants to know whether you truly possess the inheritance. And you do. Lapu Lapu leaned back. How do you know? Mei Shui looked at him. Because of the machines. Lapu Lapu frowned. The machines. The ancient celestial mechanists used something called the Forge Dao. She pointed at the mechanical components around the room. Your machines are crude. Lapu Lapu raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. They are. Lapu Lapu looked offended. That cannon was difficult to build. Mei Shui ignored him. But the principles are the same. She pointed. The energy, flow, the formations, the way you combine chi with machinery. Lapu Lapu became quiet. Mei Shui continued. Only someone who inherited the heavenly forge could know those principles. Lapu Lapu looked at his hands. So they know. Yes. How long? Probably 10,000 years. Lapu Lapu's expression changed. Then why haven't they found the forge? Mei Shui smiled. Because they didn't know where it was. And now, they know. Lapu Lapu stared. How? Mei Shui pointed toward the sky. Your cannons. Lapu Lapu froze. What? Every time you activate a chi-powered machine, you create spiritual fluctuations. Lapu Lapu understood. The ancient forge was hidden. But his machines were broadcasting its existence. He had been building technology. And announcing himself to the world. Mei Shui smiled. Congratulations. Lapu Lapu sighed. What? You've just told every powerful cultivator in the continent that the heavenly forge has awakened. The first railway. The next morning, Lapu Lapu made a decision. The Iron Dominion had to grow fast. The Black Serpent sect was coming. Other sects would follow. Kingdoms would eventually notice. He needed resources. He needed manpower. He needed territory. But most importantly, he needed transportation. The first railway project began. Hundreds of workers gathered. The track was constructed using steel rails. The design was crude, but effective. At the front stood a massive steam locomotive. It was not elegant. It was enormous. Black smoke poured from its chimney. The boiler was reinforced with heavenly forge metal. The engine contained a chi formation that increased thermal efficiency. Lapu Lapu stood beside it. Tandong Guro stared. Are you sure this thing will move? Yes. How fast? Faster than a horse. How much faster? Lapu Lapu paused. Much. Guro looked concerned. How much is much? Lapu Lapu smiled. You'll find out. The workers climbed aboard. Lapu Lapu entered the cabin. He pulled the lever. Steam filled the chamber. The wheels began turning. Slowly. The train moved. Then faster. The villagers cheered. The train accelerated. Faster. Faster. The landscape blurred. Lapu Lapu smiled. He remembered the trains of his previous life. The massive railways. The stations. The locomotives. The millions of people who relied on them. This was only the beginning. But it was enough. The Iron Dominion could now move resources faster. Troops faster. Food faster. Weapons faster. Knowledge faster. The empire had gained its first artery. The city that would become an empire. Over the next year, the Iron Dominion expanded. Villages joined. Not through conquest. Through opportunity. People heard rumors. In the Iron Dominion, farmers had food. Workers received wages. Children attended schools. Blacksmiths learned advanced techniques. Merchants made money. Commoners could become soldiers. Soldiers could become officers. Officers could become governors. For the first time, birth was not the only path to power. Talent mattered. Skill mattered. Lapu Lapu established the first formal school. The Iron Academy. There, Children studied mathematics, engineering, agriculture, medicine, military science, and cultivation. The academy shocked the martial world. Because Lapu-Lapu had made one decision. Cultivation would no longer belong only to clans and sects. Anyone could learn, anyone could improve. Talent was valuable, but education was more important. The first year produced 300 graduates. The second, 1,000. The third, 5,000. The Iron Dominion was changing. It was becoming a civilization. But civilization required law. Lapu-Lapu created a new government. The Council of Iron. Representatives were chosen from different sectors. Agriculture, military, engineering, commerce, education, medicine. The chief remained the supreme authority. But Lapu-Lapu created something new. A written constitution. Datu Makatuna read it carefully. Then looked at Lapu-Lapu. You want to limit the chief? Yes. The old warrior frowned. Why? Because power without limits becomes corruption. The chief stared. Lapu-Lapu continued. Today, you are wise. Tomorrow, another chief may not be. The old warrior thought for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Then write it. The Iron Dominion became something the martial world had never seen. Not a tribe, not a clan, not a kingdom, a government, a system, an emerging empire. The enemy moves. 3 years after the Black Wolf War, the Black Serpent sect finally acted. Not with 5 assassins, not with 10, with an army, 10,000 warriors, 300 cultivators, and 3 Spirit Foundation experts. Their target was simple, the Iron Dominion. Lapu-Lapu stood on the highest tower. He watched the enemy army approaching. Behind him stood his generals. The army had grown, 20,000 soldiers, 5,000 reserve troops, 200 artillery pieces, 1,000 rifles, mechanical war machines, steam-powered logistics, railways, and something else. Lapu-Lapu looked toward the horizon. A massive steel structure stood behind the city walls. It was his newest invention. A machine larger than any cannon. Its barrel was 20 meters long. Its ammunition was enormous. Tandang Guro stood beside him. What does that thing do? Lapu-Lapu smiled. Remember the Black Wolf clan? Guro nodded. Remember the cannon? Yes. That was the prototype. Lapu-Lapu looked at the approaching army. This, he placed his hand on the machine, is the real weapon. The generals looked nervous. How powerful? Lapu-Lapu stared toward the enemy. Powerful enough. A distant horn sounded. The Black Serpent army had arrived. At the front stood 3 Spirit Foundation cultivators. One raised his hand. A massive chi formation appeared. The soldiers of the Iron Dominion became nervous. Lapu-Lapu didn't move. The enemy commander shouted, "Heir of the Heavenly Forge." His voice echoed across the battlefield. Surrender. Lapu-Lapu smiled. No. The commander raised his sword. Then die. The enemy army charged. Lapu-Lapu lifted one hand. Wait. The generals looked at him. Wait. Lapu-Lapu nodded. Let them come closer. The enemy advanced. 500 meters. 400. 300. 200. 100. The Spirit Foundation cultivators prepared to attack. Lapu-Lapu lowered his hand. Now, the massive machine fired. Boom. The world shook. A wave of pressure swept across the battlefield. The projectile struck the enemy formation. Then, the explosion came. The earth disappeared. Thousands of soldiers were thrown into the air. The Spirit Foundation cultivators were blasted backward. The battlefield fell silent. Lapu-Lapu stared. His weapon had worked. The first true spirit artillery cannon. A weapon capable of combining industrial production with cultivation technology. He turned toward his generals. Fire. 200 cannons fired. Boom. 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 The Iron Dominion unleashed hell. The Black Serpent army collapsed. But then, the sky darkened. A terrifying pressure descended. Every soldier froze. Lapu-Lapu looked upward. A figure floated above the battlefield. An old man. His robes were black. His eyes were cold. The 3 Spirit Foundation cultivators immediately knelt. Greetings, Grand Elder. Lapu-Lapu's expression changed. Mo Tien's voice echoed in his mind. That's bad. How bad? Very. Realm. A pause. Martial King. Lapu-Lapu stared. A martial king. A cultivator capable of destroying his entire army. The old man raised one hand. Chi gathered. The sky trembled. The soldiers panicked. Lapu Lapu looked around. His army, his people, his city, his empire. He had prepared for war. But not for this. The old man smiled. Young heir, today, I will show you the difference between technology and true martial power. Lapu Lapu stared at him. Then, he smiled. The old man frowned. Why are you smiling? Lapu Lapu turned toward the largest machine in the Iron Dominion. A machine hidden beneath the city. A machine he had spent 3 years building. A machine powered by the Heavenly Forge. He had never tested it. Because he had never needed to. Until now. Lapu Lapu raised his hand. Open the forge. The earth began to shake. The city walls opened. A massive mechanical structure emerged. The soldiers stared. The martial king looked confused. Lapu Lapu smiled. Let me introduce you. The machine's core began glowing. Chi flooded through enormous conduits. The sky trembled. To the first weapon of the Iron Empire. The machine rose. A massive mechanical cannon. Its barrel pointed toward the sky. Lapu Lapu looked at the martial king. The heavenly thunder cannon. The martial king's expression finally changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. Lapu Lapu lowered his hand. Fire. Boom. The world turned white. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7 The Heavenly Thunder Cannon. The world went white. For one terrible moment, there was no sound. No shouting. No screaming. No wind. Only light. Then came the thunder. Boom. The explosion shook the entire southern wilderness. Mountains trembled. Trees were flattened. Clouds were torn apart. The battlefield disappeared beneath a massive wave of dust. The soldiers of the Iron Dominion dropped to the ground. Even the cultivators covered their ears. For several seconds, nobody knew what had happened. Then the dust began to settle. A massive crater had appeared in the center of the battlefield. The Black Serpent army was gone. Thousands of soldiers had been thrown away from the impact zone. The 3 Spirit Foundation cultivators were lying unconscious. And in the center of the crater, the martial king stood, alive, barely. His black robes were torn. Blood ran from his mouth. One arm hung uselessly. His expression was no longer arrogant. It was disbelief. Impossible. His voice was barely audible. How? The old man looked toward the city. The enormous cannon was still glowing. Steam escaped from its sides. Ancient symbols illuminated the barrel. Lapu Lapu stood behind it. He was covered in dust. His hair was a mess. His ears were ringing. But he was smiling. The old man stared at him. You. Lapu Lapu raised his hand. Are you still alive? The martial king looked furious. You dare. Good. Lapu Lapu nodded. Then the test was successful. The old man's eyes widened. Test. Lapu Lapu looked at the massive cannon. Yes. The martial king suddenly understood. The cannon had not been built as a weapon of war. It was a prototype. Lapu Lapu had just tested it on a martial king. The old man roared. You used me as a test subject. Lapu Lapu shrugged. You attacked my country. Country. The old man looked around. The Iron Dominion. The factories. The walls. The railways. The soldiers. The machines. Then he looked at Lapu Lapu. A country. You call this a country? Lapu Lapu smiled. Not yet. He looked toward the horizon. But it will be. The martial king gathered chi. The remaining energy in his body surged. He had been injured, but he was still a martial king. He raised his hand. A massive spiritual blade formed above him. The soldiers panicked. He's still alive. Protect the emperor. Defend the city. Lapu Lapu turned. Emperor. The soldiers froze. Lapu Lapu looked at them. The word had never been used before. Then Datu Makatuna stepped forward. That's what you are. Lapu Lapu stared at the old chief. What? You built this? The chief looked at the city. The Iron Dominion. You created its laws. You built its army. You brought us technology. You gave us knowledge. The chief smiled. You are no longer simply our inventor. He turned toward the soldiers. From this day forward, your leader will be known as. The soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Emperor Lapu Lapu. The shout began with one soldier. Then another. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Emperor Lapu Lapu. Emperor Lapu Lapu. Emperor Lapu Lapu. The sound shook the battlefield. Lapu Lapu stared. He had never wanted to become an emperor. He had wanted to build machines. solve problems, create something meaningful. But now, he understood. A civilization needed a leader. And someone had to stand at the front. Lapu Lapu looked at the martial king. Unfortunately, the old man raised his blade. You chose the wrong day to invade. The heavenly thunder cannon began charging again. The martial king's face changed. You cannot fire that again. Lapu Lapu smiled. You're right. The cannon was still cooling. It couldn't fire again. But Lapu Lapu had another solution. He raised his hand. Infantry. Thousands of rifles were raised. Artillery. 200 cannons turned. Mechanical core. The mechanical war machines activated. Fire. The battlefield exploded. The martial king fought. He killed dozens. Then hundreds of soldiers surrounded him. The artillery fired. The mechanical machines attacked. The rifles continued shooting. The martial king fought for 10 minutes. 20. 30. Eventually, his chi was exhausted. He fell to his knees. Lapu Lapu walked toward him. The old man looked up. Kill me. Lapu Lapu shook his head. No. The martial king froze. Why? Because you're more useful alive. The old man laughed weakly. You think you can imprison a martial king? No. Lapu Lapu smiled. I think I can convince one. The prisoner. The martial king was imprisoned. His name was Elder Han Zhen. He was one of the Black Serpent sect's most powerful elders. For 3 days, he refused to speak. Lapu Lapu didn't force him. Instead, he brought him food, books, and tea. On the 4th day, Elder Han finally spoke. You aren't going to torture me. No. Why? Because I don't need to. Han Zhen frowned. Lapu Lapu placed a map on the table. Tell me about the Black Serpent sect. No. Fine. Lapu Lapu stood. Han Zhen stared. That's it. Yes. Lapu Lapu walked toward the door. Wait. Lapu Lapu turned. Han Zhen stared at him. What do you want? Information. About what? Everything. Han Zhen laughed. You're arrogant. Probably. You think your machines can defeat the martial world. No. Lapu Lapu looked at him. I think my machines can change it. Han Zhen became silent. Lapu Lapu continued. You cultivators have spent thousands of years believing that power belongs to those who can cultivate. Han Zhen said nothing. Your sects control knowledge. Your clans control resources. Your kingdoms control ordinary people. Lapu Lapu leaned forward. But now, he smiled. I can mass-produce power. Han Zhen's expression changed. Lapu Lapu left. Behind him, the martial king sat silently. For the first time in 3,000 years. He was afraid. Not of Lapu Lapu. Not of the Iron Dominion. But of what the boy represented. Chapter 8 The Emperor of Iron. 1 month after the Battle of the Iron Dominion. The southern wilderness changed. News traveled quickly. The Black Serpent army had been defeated. 300 cultivators had been captured or killed. A martial king had been defeated. And the mysterious young ruler of the Iron Dominion had declared independence. The news spread across the continent. Kings heard. Emperors heard. Sect masters heard. The ancient clans heard. Everyone asked the same question. Who is Lapu Lapu? The answer was complicated. Some called him a genius. Others called him a demon. Some believed he was a reincarnated immortal. Others believed he had discovered an ancient inheritance. But the truth was simpler. He was an old man, trapped inside the body of a 16-year-old boy. And he had decided to build an empire. The coronation took place 3 months later. Thousands gathered. Representatives came from 27 tribes. Merchants arrived from distant cities. Even several minor kingdoms sent observers. Lapu Lapu stood before the newly constructed imperial palace. It wasn't extravagant. He hated unnecessary luxury. The building was practical. Steel reinforced. Stone foundations. Mechanical security systems. Underground tunnels. A central command room. The palace looked more like a fortress than a royal residence. Lapu Lapu preferred it that way. Datu Makatuna stood beside him. The old chief had officially retired. At 74 years old, he had become the first chairman of the Imperial Council. Tandong Guro was now master of industrial development. Mei Shui was still technically a prisoner, although she had somehow convinced everyone to let her walk around freely. She had become Lapu Lapu's most unusual advisor. Lapu Lapu stepped forward. The crowd became silent. He looked at the thousands of people before him. Today, this land becomes an empire. The crowd cheered. Lapu-Lapu raised his hand. Not an empire built on conquest. Silence. Not an empire built on slavery. Not an empire where power belongs only to the strongest. He looked toward the farmers. The workers. The soldiers. The children. Knowledge will belong to everyone. Education will belong to everyone. Opportunity will belong to everyone. The crowd became silent. Lapu-Lapu continued. We will build roads, schools, hospitals, factories, railways, ships. We will create a civilization that does not fear the future. Then he raised his hand. And if the martial world comes for us. The soldiers raised their weapons. The cannons turned. The mechanical war machines activated. Lapu-Lapu smiled. Then the martial world will learn that the age of the weak kneeling before the strong is coming to an end. The crowd erupted. Long live the emperor. Long live the Iron Empire. The black banner rose, the symbol of the hammer, the spear, the gear, and beneath them, a new symbol, a golden sun. Lapu-Lapu looked at it. He had chosen the symbol himself. The sun represented his old homeland, the Philippines, the place he had left behind, a place he could never return to. But perhaps, he could carry a piece of it with him. The Iron Empire had been born. The first imperial railway. The next 5 years transformed the empire. Railways expanded. Factories multiplied. Agricultural production increased. Steam-powered machinery replaced manual labor. New cities appeared. The population exploded. The Imperial Academy produced engineers. The Military Academy produced officers. The Medical Academy trained doctors. For the first time, ordinary people could become scholars. And scholars could become leaders. Lapu-Lapu also created something revolutionary. The Imperial Bank. For the first time, the empire had a unified currency. The iron coin. Trade became easier. Merchants loved it. The economy grew. Lapu-Lapu understood something many rulers did not. An empire wasn't built with swords. It was built with productivity. The more people produced, the richer the empire became. The richer the empire became, the more technology it could create. The more technology it created, the stronger its military became. The stronger the military, the safer the empire. It was a cycle, and Lapu-Lapu intended to keep it spinning. But the martial world was not happy. The sects had lost their monopoly. The Iron Empire was teaching commoners, giving them weapons, giving them education, giving them technology. The cultivators were becoming nervous. One sect issued a declaration. The Iron Empire is violating the natural order. Lapu-Lapu read the declaration, then burned it. Another sect sent a warning. Return the Heavenly Forge. Lapu-Lapu ignored it. A third sent assassins. They never reached the capital. The Empire's surveillance network caught them. Lapu-Lapu smiled. Technology. He looked at Mei Shui. You said cultivators were superior. Mei Shui drank tea. They are. Really? Yes. Then why are they constantly losing? Mei Shui sighed. Because you're annoying. Lapu-Lapu smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. Chapter 9 The War of 10,000 Sects. The Iron Empire was now 20 years old. Lapu-Lapu was 36. But he still looked 16. The cultivation system had changed his body. The Heavenly Forge scripture had slowed his aging. His physical appearance remained almost unchanged. This created a new problem. People began calling him the Eternal Emperor. Lapu-Lapu hated the name. I am not eternal. The Imperial Council disagreed. You haven't aged. That's not the same thing. Your Majesty, you look exactly the same as 20 years ago. Good genetics. Everyone stared. Lapu-Lapu sighed. Fine. He returned to his office. The problem was no longer his appearance. The problem was war. The sects had finally united. Not all of them, but enough. 27 major sects, 43 clans, 11 kingdoms, and countless smaller organizations. Together, they had assembled an army of more than 1 million. Their goal was simple: destroy the Iron Empire. Lapu-Lapu stood before a massive strategic map. His generals surrounded him. General Guro, Marshal Tala, Commander Mei Shui, Chief Engineer Datu Balagdas, Minister of Science Maria, The empire had changed. So had its leadership. Lapu-Lapu pointed at the map. The enemy will attack from 3 directions. Maria nodded. Yes. How many cultivators? Approximately 100,000. Lapu-Lapu looked at the number. That's a lot. Mei Shui nodded. Most are low level. How many powerful ones? 7 martial kings. Lapu-Lapu's expression changed. 7. And 1 martial emperor. Silence. The room became cold. Even Lapu-Lapu was concerned. A martial emperor was an existence capable of destroying cities. One could potentially fight an entire army alone. The Iron Empire had weapons capable of killing martial kings. But martial emperors were different. Their defensive abilities were terrifying. Their speed was unimaginable. Their spiritual attacks could destroy entire formations. The Heavenly Thunder Cannon could injure one. But it could not fire rapidly. Lapu-Lapu stared at the map. How long? 1 month. Lapu-Lapu nodded. Then we have 1 month. Mei Shui frowned. For what? Lapu-Lapu smiled. To build something. Project Aegis. The largest project in Imperial history began. Thousands of engineers were recruited. Hundreds of factories were converted. Millions of workers contributed. The Empire's entire industrial capacity was redirected. The goal, a weapon capable of fighting a martial emperor. Lapu-Lapu called it Project Aegis. The machine was enormous. A massive defensive shield, powered by thousands of spirit crystals, connected to the Heavenly Forge. The shield could cover an entire city. But there was one problem. It consumed enormous energy. If activated, the Empire would lose nearly half its stored resources. Lapu-Lapu didn't care, because the alternative was worse. The enemy arrived. The sky darkened. Millions of soldiers approached. The Iron Empire mobilized. The railway system moved troops. Factories produced weapons. Medical trains transported doctors. Supply trains carried food. The Empire functioned like a single machine. Lapu-Lapu stood on the capital walls. He looked at the enemy. Then at his army. He raised his hand. The cannons fired. The War of 10,000 Sects began. The first month. The Empire won. The second. It began losing. The third. The enemy broke through. The martial kings attacked. 7 of them. Each one destroyed entire military formations. Lapu-Lapu deployed mechanical war machines. The machines fought. The cannons fired. The rifles shot. But the martial kings were too strong. One destroyed an entire armored division. Another broke through the eastern wall. A third killed 3 generals. The Empire was losing. Lapu-Lapu watched the battlefield. For the first time in decades. He felt fear. Not for himself. For his people. The enemy had finally found the limit of technology. The limit of industrial warfare. The limit of his inventions. Then, the sky changed. A man appeared above the battlefield. A martial emperor. His pressure descended. Millions of soldiers fell to their knees. The emperor raised his hand. The sky cracked. Lapu-Lapu stared. The attack was coming. Activate Aegis. The Imperial Council hesitated. Your Majesty, activate it. But the energy. Do it. The entire capital began glowing. A massive barrier appeared. The martial emperor attacked. Boom. The barrier shook. Cracks appeared. Lapu-Lapu watched. Again. Boom. The shield cracked further. Again. Boom. The capital shook. Lapu-Lapu looked at the energy readings. How long? 3 minutes. Can it hold? No. Then we have 3 minutes. He turned. Prepare the thunder cannon. The engineers stared. Your Majesty, we only have 1 shot. Lapu-Lapu nodded. Then make it count. The heavenly thunder cannon began charging. The martial emperor raised his hand. The Aegis barrier began collapsing. Lapu-Lapu stood beside the cannon. The energy reached maximum. The barrier shattered. The martial emperor smiled. You lose. Lapu-Lapu looked up. No. The cannon fired. Boom. The martial emperor was struck. The world exploded. When the smoke cleared, the martial emperor was gone. Lapu-Lapu stared. No body. No trace. Only a massive crater. The enemy army froze. The martial emperor had disappeared. The Iron Army roared. Attack. The Empire counterattacked. The remaining martial kings fled. The sect armies collapsed. The war ended. The Iron Empire had won. But Lapu-Lapu knew something. The martial emperor wasn't dead. He had survived. And now, he had become Lapu Lapu's greatest enemy. Chapter 10 The Birth of the Iron Empire. The war ended after 5 years. 5 years of blood, 5 years of destruction, 5 years of technological advancement. The Iron Empire survived, but it had changed. The empire now controlled half the southern continent. The sects had been weakened. The kingdoms had been defeated. The clans had surrendered, and the martial world was terrified. Lapu Lapu stood before the imperial palace. The city behind him had been rebuilt. Factories had returned to work. Railways were operational. Schools reopened. Hospitals treated the wounded. The people began rebuilding their lives. The emperor walked through the streets. People bowed. Children waved. Workers cheered. Lapu Lapu smiled. He had started with nothing. A 16-year-old boy. Thin, weak, bullied, despised. Now, he ruled an empire. But he knew something. The war had taught him a painful lesson. Technology alone wasn't enough. Cultivation alone wasn't enough. An empire needed both. That was why he had created the Imperial Cultivation Academy. For the first time, technology and martial arts were combined. Cultivators studied engineering. Engineers studied cultivation. Weapons were designed specifically for cultivators. Mechanical armor could amplify chi. Spirit-powered engines could increase production. New machines were being designed every day. The next age had begun. The age of mechanized cultivation. The emperor's final decision. 1 year after the war, Lapu Lapu summoned the imperial council. I have a new project. Everyone became nervous. They knew what that meant. New project usually meant massive construction, millions of workers, thousands of engineers, and a significant possibility of explosions. Lapu Lapu placed a blueprint on the table. The council stared. What is that? Lapu Lapu smiled. The first orbital elevator. Silence. Mei Shui blinked. What? Lapu Lapu pointed upward. We've conquered the land. He pointed toward the sea. We're building the navy. He pointed toward the mountains. We've built the railways. Then he looked toward the sky. Now, we go upward. Everyone stared. Lapu Lapu continued. There are continents beyond this one. Other civilizations. Other worlds. Perhaps even other realms. Mei Shui stared. You're insane. Lapu Lapu smiled. Probably. He rolled up the blueprint. But I'm curious. The final scene. That night, Lapu Lapu returned to the Heavenly Forge. The ancient machines were silent. Mo Tian appeared. You have accomplished much. Lapu Lapu looked around. Not enough. You created an empire. One empire. You defeated a martial emperor. He survived. You changed the world. Only this world. Mo Tian laughed. You really are ambitious. Lapu Lapu smiled. I was an old man when I died. He looked at the Heavenly Forge. I thought I had no time left. He placed his hand against the ancient core. Now, I have too much. The forge began glowing. Lapu Lapu froze. Mo Tian's expression changed. Wait, what? That's impossible. The ancient core began activating. The walls shook. Ancient machines came alive. One by one. Thousands. Millions. A massive holographic map appeared. Lapu Lapu stared. The map showed the continent. Then the planet. Then, the stars. Mo Tian's voice trembled. The Celestial Mechanist Empire. Lapu Lapu looked at him. What? They didn't disappear. The holographic map expanded. Beyond the planet. Beyond the solar system. Thousands of worlds appeared. Mo Tian stared. They escaped. Lapu Lapu's eyes widened. Escaped. The empire wasn't destroyed. It retreated. The final battle wasn't their defeat. It was their departure. Lapu Lapu stared at the stars. Then, a message appeared. Ancient. Encrypted. Written by the last emperor of the Celestial Mechanist Empire. The message contained only one sentence. To whoever awakens the Heavenly Forge. Do not follow us. The message disappeared. Lapu Lapu frowned. Why? The forge answered. A second message appeared. This time, there was only one word. Run. The entire Heavenly Forge went dark. Lapu Lapu stood frozen. Then, something appeared in the sky. A massive object. Beyond the atmosphere. Invisible to ordinary eyes. But the Heavenly Forge could see it. A ship. An enormous ship. Black as space. Covered in ancient symbols. And approaching the planet. Mo Tian stared. They found us. Lapu Lapu looked upward. Who? Mo Tian's voice was barely a whisper. The enemies of the Celestial Mechanist Empire. Lapu Lapu stared at the approaching vessel. How long? I don't know. Months. No. Years. No. Lapu Lapu's expression hardened. Then how long? Mo Tian looked at him. They're already here. Lapu Lapu turned. Above the Iron Empire, the sky began to crack. A massive black gate appeared. Something was coming through. The people below stared upward. Lapu Lapu walked to the balcony of the Imperial Palace. Millions of citizens looked at him. The Emperor raised his hand. The military mobilized. Cannons turned toward the sky. Mechanical armies awakened. Factories began producing weapons. The railway system activated. Across the empire, millions of soldiers prepared. Lapu Lapu looked upward. He smiled. He had spent 20 years building an empire. He had defeated clans, sects, kingdoms, and even a martial emperor. Now, something far greater had arrived. Lapu Lapu looked toward the Black Gate. Fine. He turned toward his generals. Wake up the entire military. Activate every factory. Open every weapons depot. Call every ally. Prepare every machine. The generals saluted. Yes, Your Majesty. Lapu Lapu looked back at the sky. His eyes were no longer those of a 16-year-old boy, nor those of the 68-year-old man who had once died alone. They were the eyes of an emperor, an engineer, a survivor, a builder, and perhaps, the founder of the greatest civilization this world would ever know. He smiled. Let's see. What kind of world is waiting for us? The Black Gate opened. A massive mechanical eye appeared beyond it. Then a voice echoed across the entire planet. Heir of the Celestial Mechanist Empire. Lapu Lapu stepped forward. You have awakened the forge. The empire fell silent. You have rebuilt the Iron Age. The sky trembled. You have violated the ancient pact. Lapu Lapu raised his head. The voice continued. For this crime, your world will be erased. The empire's soldiers raised their weapons. Lapu Lapu smiled. He looked at the massive machines surrounding the capital. The factories, the railways, the cities, the schools, the people, everything he had built, everything he had fought for, everything he had created from nothing. He turned toward the black sky. Then, he gave his final order. Fire. The entire Iron Empire unleashed its weapons. Thousands of cannons fired. Millions of rifles erupted. Mechanical armies marched. Spirit-powered war machines awakened. The heavenly thunder cannon charged. The world shook. And Lapu Lapu, the old man reborn as a 16-year-old boy. The weak child who had once been bullied. The mechanical genius who had transformed a forgotten tribe. The emperor who had challenged the martial world. Stood at the center of it all. And smiled. Because he finally understood. The Iron Empire was never meant to remain a small kingdom. It was never meant to stop at the southern wilderness. It was never even meant to remain on this planet. His destiny was much greater. He would build an empire among the stars. But first, he would have to survive the war that was coming. A war against an enemy older than the martial world itself. A war that would determine the fate of humanity. And somewhere beyond the stars, an ancient civilization had begun to awaken. The Celestial Mechanist Empire was coming home. End of Volume 1. The Rise of the Iron Empire. Volume 2. The Celestial War. Coming next.